Right, well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Thursday Garden Chat, the weekly public service broadcast from Garden Masterclass. I'm flying solo tonight. Annie is in the Mead House Garden in the Netherlands. Lucky her. I had a call from her a little while ago. They've got the keys to the garden overnight, and they were going to order pizzas. So pizzas in the Mead House Garden. All right for some. I'm busy at the moment putting together our winter webinar program, which will start at the end of September. We've got all sorts of really very interesting and exciting people lined up for that. We've got a few live events left for this summer, notably one in a couple of weeks' time at the Tom Stuart Smith Plant Library, which is an extremely interesting and innovative institution. I'm going to be participating in that, unfortunately only zoomed in, as family health reasons mean I can't travel at the moment. And we'll also be doing another tour around Maurice Foster's extraordinary private arboretum in Kent. So do please check out the diary pages for those events. And the winter webinars, shouldn't really call them winter webinars because they cover far more than the winter. Anyway, they will be, as they go up, we will be doing early bird offers on some of those. So do keep a look at the diary pages. For those of you who are new to us, there might be a few people here, then we do this weekly public service broadcast. We have a membership program, and we have a monthly email newsletter. And if you want to hear what we're up to, do please sign up for the newsletter on the website. Now, these Thursday evening events, which go onto our YouTube channel, we do for free. Everyone contributes for free. So we do really appreciate donations to help with running costs, because sometimes these do take quite a bit of work, and we very much appreciate donations in recognition of the fact that since COVID lockdown, we've done this as a freebie. So now this evening, rather special because we've got the very first one of these events we did back in April 2020 was with Claire Takacs, the photographer. So I was delighted to welcome Claire back tonight to talk about her latest book, which she's done in collaboration with Giacomo Guzzon. So now, Claire, would you like to just first of all introduce yourself so we all know who you are? And first of all, I would stress that Claire is currently in a cottage, probably on the wrong side of a hill in Cumbria in northern England, with such bad Wi-Fi connection. First of all, she looked like an alien, but she is at least now pink. So Claire, please introduce.
Sorry about that. Yes. Yeah, thank you very much, Noel. Yeah, so I'm a garden photographer. I think I lose track, but it's nearly 20 years that I've been doing it. Noel Kingsbury, we connected very early. I didn't have any contact at the start, and started working for Gardens Illustrated. And I remember Juliet Roberts, the editor at the time, connected us because I was in America. So that was the beginning of an amazing collaboration with you. So I really appreciate that. And we've covered many incredible gardens around the world for Gardens Illustrated and other publications. And also we've done our book Wild together. So that's just a short description.
Here we are. Yes. It's we have done some good collaborations, and we've got another one at the beginning of the pipeline, I think, haven't we?
Yes, we do.
A few years to appear, but always good to have these things on the back boiler. And Giacomo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm a landscape architect. Have been working for 10 years in practice in London for Gillespie's Landscape Architects, and I'm the head of planting design there. And recently also became a student. I'm a PhD student in plant science with TU Berlin, but I'm researching from London Action from Kew Gardens, and I'm studying the drought tolerance of shrubs in particular. So that's my topic.
Oh, Great, great. So now I'm going to go straight to screen share. And because what we're discussing this evening is a book that Claire and Giacomo have recently published called Visionary. And it's a book basically about the gardens for the future, for a climate, very specifically for a climate change future. So Claire, would you like to talk about the idea of the book and how it came to be about, and terrible
Sure.
battles you had getting it, with the publisher, or perhaps not, perhaps a smooth and easy
Maybe I'll
journey.
leave that one out. Yes. Okay, so firstly, thank you very much, Noel and Annie, for the opportunity today, and to all of those listening live and in the future recordings. We really appreciate your interest. I'm just going to begin by talking a bit about the journey of making the book, and then Giacomo will come in and discuss some of its main themes with specific examples of gardens. I'm just going to say next for the slides, because Noel is running the slideshows because my internet is not great, unfortunately. So next, please, Noel. Visionary was nearly a 3-year project, with the best part of 2 years photographing, and then I spent about 10 months putting it together. The editing process was actually quite grueling, but and I think I'm still recovering from it. So it's wonderful to have it out into the world now and to be able to share this book. Next. The idea was sparked on a Zoom call with friend James Golden. Hi, James. I think you're listening to today from his wonderful garden in Federal Twist in New Jersey, as seen here. Next. I was seeking ideas and interesting gardens for my next book commission. Next. And as you can see, James loves plants. This is his front door here. And mutual friend Giacomo, with equal passion for planting and design, joined us on this Zoom call. It wasn't planned, so it's a very nice surprise, which turned out very well. Next. It was not long into our conversation while listening to Giacomo talk. Next. That it was becoming clear that our changing climate was the biggest issue designers and gardeners were facing today. Next. I hadn't considered or captured the diversity of landscapes he was describing, particularly by some of the world's great landscape architecture studios. And this is a public park and rooftop garden surrounding a science lab in Sweden by Snøhetta. And it's quite amazing. I shot this garden the day after photographing at Peter Korn's sand garden. So it was just brilliant to have the diversity of gardens and landscapes to look at. Next. So we're at the Sweden garden. Is that right, Noel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to yeah.
Yeah. Also, Giacomo discussed utilitarian spaces like car parks and rain gardens in urban areas, which are providing solutions for increased flooding. And this is a narrow rain garden in Stockholm. It's a vibrant green corridor in a former industrial area, and it also acts as a mini public park, which I saw was very well used. Next. So apart from the expanding range of climates which are dealing with extreme heat and prolonged drought, next, Giacomo also referred to several post-industrial and abandoned sites in Germany and the US transformed into inspiring public parks. Next. I chose to do the work with Giacomo as I wanted to collaborate with someone working as a landscape architect, dealing with these issues daily. And this is his work in London with Gillespie's. Next. Here at Elephant Park, Giacomo, this is Giacomo's work in Elephant Park. Like me, Giacomo travels extensively, and he's got an unusual curiosity paired with an expertise in planting. And we fittingly met at the Beth Chatto conference. Next. So in planning stages, we spent several weekends together in the UK, combined, of course, with good food and country walks, compiling a wish list of designers and locations from our contacts and own research. And here was an extraordinary project in Copenhagen. It's a waste to energy plant, and it also doubles as a public park and ski slope. This was something I'd seen on a Netflix documentary, The Art of Design, and just had to visit. Next, we're at the Singapore hospital here. We attempted an even spread across the world with locations which seemed possible for me to shoot. Next, ground studio. Initially, it was going to be 30 to 40 gardens, but once I started, I got so busy working through this ever-expanding list. Next, that by the time I caught my breath closer to the end, we were at nearly 80 newly photographed projects. Next, we aim for diversity with our selection with varying scales, budgets, applications, and climates. Next, we also wanted to show projects which were lesser known and current. Next, I have often been frustrated by the planting in public spaces and the lack of attention to this, but thankfully today this is not the case. Next, it feels great in this book to almost create a bridge between landscape architecture and garden design. Next, by having the freedom to show such a diversity of contemporary projects side by side. Next, we're at James Basson's garden in France. We look for spaces which have both high quality planting and design, and beauty was always, or aesthetics was also a prime consideration. Next, and one thing I failed to mention in the book's intro is that visionary is also a journey piece. Next, showing the gardens in the order they were shot. Next, it was May when I began photographing the book in Spain, and I recall it was already 37 degrees, nearly 100 degrees Fahrenheit in early May. Next, one of the things I love most about my work is the people I meet and the time I share with them. Next, and it's often best when I can stay on a property and be totally immersed in the world of the garden. Next, I recall an interesting conversation with Miguel here when I told him about doing a book on sustainable gardens which are working with our changing climate. And he said to be careful with that. It's because the environments they work in, Spain, to be totally sustainable, really there would be no garden there. Next, however, this is not human nature, of course, and this beautiful garden here, I consider it to be their masterpiece to date. Next, I recall this passionate owner describing how much he appreciates his garden and loves to walk around it, even in the middle of the night with his head torch, taking in all of its splendor underneath the stars. Next, I love that we have Spain on the cover as they are dealing with some of the harshest climates for garden making, showing the way with a different aesthetic. Next, what would have once been lawn and highly irrigated planting is now a gravel garden with climate appropriate species. Next, with color tones and forms. Next, blending superbly with the surroundings. Next, here we are in Morocco. So what we're trying to show with this book are steps moving in the right direction. And this is often about embracing a new aesthetic, which is equally as beautiful, if not more beautiful. Next, some of the gardens are completely dry with no supplementary irrigation after installation. Next, while others use only minimal irrigation and always climate appropriate planting with no or very minimal lawn area. Next, here at the Totoy Club, it's a sports and wellness club in Athens. I photographed, it was 43 degrees that day. And the lawn area here is planted with Dichondra repens. It's a species which requires significantly less water. Next, here we've got Sam Cox in Australia. I love the different approaches to garden making and wanted to show that being considerate for our climate doesn't mean we all have to garden in one particular way. For example, in Australia, this is Sam Cox's native coastal plantings, followed by Jane Jones' playful but more manicured garden. She's got a diverse mix of climate appropriate planting. Next, we've got Jo Ferguson's stunning mixed native and exotic plantings. She's skillfully creating a new naturalistic look for Australian gardens. Then we've got Michael Wright and Kath Rush's award-winning low-budget sand garden, which acts as a giant reservoir to store water, and they've also edged it with fire-retardant planting. Next is Philip Johnson's off-grid new public garden in Victoria, Australia. It contains over 400 native Australian plants. And here is Simon Rickard's exuberant home garden full of colour. And what really impressed me about this is I never thought it would be possible in Australia to create a garden like this, which is full of so much colour. especially at the end of summer. It's basically Simon has skillfully selected plants, choosing them from similar climatic zones around the world. And he said to me he only waters a couple of times a year, if that. So I think that's a remarkable achievement. Next. Then further south in Tasmania, this is Mark and Karen Fountains. It's this very stylish Japanese influenced garden planted with mostly native endemic species. And finally in Australia, Noel, you know this garden. This is the Tasmanian coastal landscape where owners Jenny and Rob Churchill are nurturing a habitat for wildlife, while they are lovingly restoring their land through extensive hand weeding to remove invasive species and reintroducing endemic species. We're now in Texas. So the journey of this book has really changed the way I look at gardens. It's much harder for me to see and photograph gardens which are not working in this direction and within our environmental constraints. Next, we've got another picture in Copenhagen in Copenhagen. The book has also opened my eyes to the great potential landscape architects and gardeners have in shaping our future. Next is Joe McCur's Meadow Garden, just outside the Cotswolds. And hopefully with the book, what we've tried to do is provide a glimpse into the beauty possible, often just with a shift in aesthetic. And Joe McCur's dry garden, it really struck me how much it connected to its surroundings. Next, it's a very different looking English garden, or England. It felt to me more like Australia, but her garden really fitted with the landscape. And that was photographed again during the record-breaking heat wave. So we just go to the end of Joe McCur's garden, and then the final picture is Lauren Springer. So this project has been hugely uplifting, spending time with people who truly care about what they're doing and the resources which they're consuming, especially water. So we hope it inspires others to do the same. So on to Giacomo.
Okay. So, well, thank you, Claire, for the introduction, and Noel. Yeah, I think we can keep going. Yes, so it was personally, as a landscape architect, doing this book has been a huge journey, you can imagine, discovering these gardens and talking with everyone who is included in the book. And some of the garden we also visited together with Claire, which was an added kind of experience to be embedded in these places. But I guess what we thought, it was easier to talk about certain topics. Of course, we cannot talk into any detail about 80 gardens, you can imagine, but we thought there are certain strong topics that run through the book, which I think are interesting to point out and maybe just stop a second longer there. But yes, Kurt Wilkinson, I know, Noel, you guys did also, I believe, a masterclass with him or an interview and video. Talking with him has been really incredible. Hearing his story of gardening in South Australia, not far from Adelaide, and his story, I found his story very interesting because he admitted how wrong he was at the beginning. He was trying to grow all the plants he was seeing from more northern countries. He was trying to grow the salvias he saw in Pete Odo's planting and other plants he was seeing from Nigel, and they will all die even if he was giving them water. Now, the climate there is a harsh Mediterranean climate in Adelaide. So then he found out there was a Phytophthora fungi in the soil, so the plants will simply die even when they got water. So when he decided to completely turn off the watering on his property, that's when the successes started to, to appear. And he started to look at plants that were growing on the roadside, starting to look what plants would really manage the heat and the drought there. And then he started combining succulents with Mediterranean plants, the juxtaposition between formality and more wild-looking planting. So he created this kind of special combination of planting all around his house, and he created this special environment, which which is really, I think, uplifting in the sense that, you know, he completely accepted the location where he is, and he accepted the fact that, you know, you cannot fight against nature. And it was really interesting to hear from him. So if we move to the next garden, yeah, Collins and Bruce in Austin, Texas. This is a garden we visited together with Claire 2 years ago on a long trip, on a long drive we took from Austin all the way to LA, where we visited many gardens on our way. I found this very interesting because first is the garden created during COVID by a lawyer who has a young family and live in this house, and his friend who is a horticulturalist who lives down the road. And they decided to create this Texas adapted crevice garden by mixing plants that are going to be adapted and hardy in Texas. Now, this is a shift. What we found, Claire and I, very interesting when we were there is when you turn around and you look on the other side of the street, you will see the typical Austin front yard, how they say, with lawn and langestremias or roses. They love roses in Austin somehow. So very water, you know, demanding landscape, still very common in Austin. Although Austin has quite hot climates. The rainfall is not as low, but evapotranspiration is very high because you're very low in latitude. So this garden was really a shift in completely the aesthetic of this neighborhood, kind of a nice neighborhood with typical green and lush front yards, and this is completely different, completely mulched with natural local gravel, local stone, and the combination between Mediterranean and high desert plants made really an interesting combination of plants. And plus is really giving the people of this neighborhood the opportunity to see a different approach. You know, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, but we hope that this is going kind of to influence or animate other people to look beyond roses and langestremias. So that's the hope. If we go next, other way. Oh yeah, the Stavrouniarchos Foundation Cultural Center in Athens. Again, interesting story. This is a public park around the Renzo Piano building, which is the National Library, and the theater, National Theater, and this park was created all around where it was a wasteland, an industrial site by Deborah Nevis and Heli Pangalu. Now, this park has so many stories embedded. I'm going to tell you just a few. There is so much to tell about each of these, but a big meadow was created as a roof. It has this huge meadow, which is a green roof, with seeds collected by botanists in the hills around Athens. It was the idea is to kind of mimic the natural landscape around Athens, these kind of dry meadows that they have around. But then the planting, it has a lot of there is a desalinification system to create fresh water. There are rain gardens. All the water is harvested. But from a planting point of view, it was talking with the designers made me really understand that this was not common in Athens. This made really people aware about the Mediterranean plants, that they were maybe not as desirable in an urban environment. People were still kind of growing azaleas and hydrangeas, you know, plants that require a huge amount of water in Athens, which is very hot summer climate. So the power of this project was to really put the Mediterranean planting on a pedestal, make it really look like a very desirable. So interesting, a lot of plants were shipped also from France, from Philippi, introduced, propagated by local nursery. So it had two influences. It influenced the nursery trade to grow more, you know, Mediterranean and climate adapted plants, but also importantly, it really influenced private people and people who have gardens to really look at Mediterranean plants and the beauty of Mediterranean plants that they might have known, but they didn't really consider or didn't see it worthy of a garden. And here they are as a, you know, celebrating this kind of new biggest urban park in Athens. So it has a very important message, how the planting could really shift the aesthetic of and the the perception of the planting by the local people. So next. Yeah, so this is the same, the Stavrouniakos Park. You see the huge amount of planting of shrubs and trees that were planted into these. Yeah, here you can see the meadow area on the roof. So if we go next. So what it became also very clear when we were thinking and thinking about this book with Claire was that climate change does have different effects for everyone where we are. It has effects to everyone where we are on the planet, but is also bringing kind of an extra. The weather patterns are getting more extreme. So we might have more droughts, but as well more heavy thunderstorms. And that's kind of, I have seen clearly in London, we get a few summers which are very dry, and what means we don't have rain for 6-8 weeks in a row, but then we can have a very huge thunderstorm, which brings a lot of millimeter of rain in an hour. So what to do with all this water? So the SADS, the Sustainable Urban Drainage System water, is a large topic in the book, and is shown in different contexts and different climates. So if we move next, yeah, here is Arian Bokal car park. And this is you can imagine if all car park could be like that. And this is really a big rain garden, is a health facility surrounding this car park. And Arian skillfully, selected all the plants, a lot of different shrubs and trees to thrive in this location. And there are all these swales where all the water drain into it, and there are different plant mixes. At the bottom, you have plants that prefers a little bit more moisture, and then at the edge, more drought-tolerant plants. But it's very immersive and very colorful, and that was when we were talking with Claire, is we need to show also quite utilitarian places. It's not always about beautiful gardens. It's also about car park, streets, roofs, and that's what we are trying to show in the book. Also quite practical places, utilitarian places. So if you go next. Yeah, the University of El Paso, this is a favorite of mine. When I was a student in landscape architecture, I was admiring Christy Takacs, so quite a few years ago. And that was quite a surprise when we visited her and we could stay with her, and we spent some time together. And I told Christy, I used to be a fan with you. I cannot believe now with you staying at your place. But the University of El Paso, I found it a very important project, because it completely transformed the identity of the university. It used to be a university surrounded by car park and a few lawn area with huge junipers. So what Christy and her team tries really to bring the surrounding desert into the campus, and really gives a strong identity to this campus. So they remove all the asphalt and the tarmac, and they created these arroyos, these rain gardens. They call them arroyos there. And basically, El Paso is quite high in altitude, is around 1,000 meters above sea level, and it has a drier climate. But then it can have very strong thunderstorms during the summer, which can literally flood the city. So the idea here is to keep as much water as possible in the site, so to feed it back into the aquifer and also water all the plants. So it has these very large arroyos, rain gardens, to keep all the water on site. And then using local materials, using local planting, native or adapted planting. So he has a very strong identity, and he won so many prizes, sustainability prizes and so on, but he has only 2 lawn areas for celebration, graduation ceremonies. And the lawn topic, it has been a contentious topic throughout this book. We have been talking with all the designers, and no lawn, yes lawn. And I think, sometimes it needs to be done for practical reason. The right lawn can be put, and the smaller a smaller amount of loan, and it can be water with recycled water. So there are ways to do. We're not saying we cannot have nowhere loan. Maybe just a way of rethinking how much loan we need, maybe. So if we move next, yeah, recycling. That's another big topic. We're just picking out a few projects just to mention the topic, but recycling and upcycling and reusing structure is a topic that came up in so many projects. So if we move to the next, yeah, the Brooklyn Bridge Park, another favorite I have been following Brooklyn Bridge Park for years now through my visits in the US and visiting James in particular in New York, and just walking down and photographing, seeing completely phase after phase how this park developed. But very importantly, this park is built where it was a big industrial site. It used to be all these piers were used for shipping goods, and they had big warehouses which were taken down and repurposed, and sometimes the structure are kept. Sometimes those piers were just used for playing fields. Sometimes were repurposed. Here you can see all the old poles that were holding the piers were left there to create a marine environment. This project has so many topics that it ticks so many boxes in terms of urban drainage system, recycling water, climate adaptive planting. Also, interesting, this park was during the hurricane in 2015, I believe, if I'm not wrong. It was flooded by 3 feet of water, so quite a large amount of water. So it was also a testing ground for resilience and future adaptation for climate change and sea level rise. So how can we deal with this, which is going to, according to the climate report and academic studies, is we are going to experience more and more. But another small story, I need to move on then, is how this park connected people back to the water. Spring Bay Mill in Tasmania, an amazing site, used to be the biggest wood chip mill, can you believe, in this amazing location. And it was repurposed into a resort, hotel, all with sustainability really thinking behind it and reusing all these structures. You can see the spray facility to the right. This concrete spray facility now is used as an amphitheater. They reuse as much as possible all the crushed material. They planted only native plants that it could be sourced within a radius of, I don't know, 50 kilometers. Anyway, very close to the site, and really giving back this site to nature, which was really inspiring project. And a lot of structure were repurposed or rebuilt or reused, like this big concrete base. So another interesting project. So if we move next, ecology or biodiversity. This, of course, a big topic. We're all talking about biodiversity, how to support biodiversity. I think we are showing a couple of projects next. Yeah, the NEP estate, which is probably you have heard of about it, is a big experiment. Really, is a garden, is a private garden, is part of a bigger rewilding effort to rewild this site. But this is the garden, the walled garden, which was created to maximize the opportunity for biodiversity, in a few words, and is a collaboration between Tom Stuart-Smith, James Smith, Hitchmo, Mike Crowley, so entomologist, designer, planting designers, and so trying to create a garden that is climate adapted, but also that supports as much biodiversity as possible. There are a lot of themes that came through this garden, and I think probably is one after this, is how important is the spatial complexity of a terrain, kind of maximize the opportunities for biodiversity by creating different wet area or dry area, creating this different mulch, different type of plants, a lot of umbellifers, a lot of different native and non-native plants which flower throughout the year. So all these topics came through, and this is a garden I think we're going to learn more in the future because they are assessing the biodiversity as it matures. So we will see in the future, also with the future reports, how much it will improve and how many species, insects species they will be able to find in this garden. So it's a really an interesting experiment for us also to learn what can we do to support biodiversity in a garden context, because the rewilding project that takes the state is a huge site. So these are other topics that came through about land management and using also animals to maintain the land. But this on a garden, I think, is interesting because it shows how can we rewild in a garden context, in a smaller context. So if we move next, yes, the pollinator and bird garden, which I visited, I think 2 summers ago in Penn State by Phyto Studio. And a lot of the topics that I mentioned on the Napa estate, I could find them here. Here is a garden really created, trying to embed in the garden all the data and the science that the university had available about entomology and how to support bird population. So again, the terrain is very uneven. Talking with the designers was really interesting to see how much thought was about soil topologies. They have 7 different mulch material just to create this complexity. And then the tree canopy, the shrub canopy, the herbaceous, the bulbs, and really trying to maximize the niches, the ecological niches for biodiversity. So again, it goes back to the spatial complexity that I think seems to be so important for supporting a biodiversity. So not a flat terrain, but a lot of undulation. So if we move next, yeah, reimagining and rethinking. This is the last topic. If we move next, yeah, the Domino Park back in New York. This the former sugar refinery, the Domino Sugar Refinery site in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg. And again, this interesting how this project really celebrates the industrial history of the site by really leaving a lot of the structures, reconverting them, and rethinking what can we do with all these cranes, with all these artifacts. And a lot was, they created this elevated walkway where it was conveying belts. Then they created within some big cylinders, metal cylinders, playground, play features. So really a project that think about what can we do with all the artifacts we're left with, all the metals, and with also all these materials, the metal and the concrete, they have a high embedded carbon footprint. So what can we do with them? And then, of course, integrating the planting and the resilience of the planting, but also, again, the flood defense, taking the potential flood defense into Brooklyn. The next. Yeah, and this, I think Claire mentioned before, in Singapore. Now, Singapore, there is so much to tell you about Singapore. So it's hard to summarize in a few words, but Singapore has tried in the past very hard to really include a lot of green as much as possible everywhere, and also about urban drainage system, also about cooling the city. And this is a hospital completely maximizing the opportunities for green on facades, on roof. There is a green roofs. There is a green vegetable garden on the roof. There are green walls. But this project and this building is also shifted so to maximize the channeling of the cool winds, so it could minimize the use of energy use. So I think he used only 30% of the energy that he would be using if it was a conventional hospital. And it has a lot of communal areas where also the public can use. Yes, and is really embracing the green, and also the fact that there are a lot of academic studies showing the importance of green for patients and from people, just lowering blood pressure, as simple as that. But also simply for people to get better, it seems to have an effect when they see green and they are embedded in the green. So it has a lot of good stories. But as I said, Singapore we're covering the book quite a few projects, also big urban parks where they completely recreate a completely new urban drainage system there. So Singapore is a really interesting place where they're trying on a tropical climate to do a lot of things we have seen more in northern or more for seasonal climates. So I think that's our journey, quick journey. I tried to contain myself with the words so we can have more a discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, fantastic range of projects and locations. And how many of those were you actually able to visit, Giacomo, or a lot, probably?
I have not quantified, but it was financially and time-wise not possible to visit all of them. But what I did, I spoke with nearly, I would say, 98% of everyone who is rather designer or owner, and it was a great opportunity for me to learn about these projects. Yeah, but I haven't actually quantified how many I visited. I visited some by myself, some with Claire. Yeah.
Yes, and mostly these were fairly large or high-end or corporate projects. I mean, was it actually more difficult to find smaller projects, or is it perhaps in some ways more difficult to illustrate these principles in smaller projects?
I will start, Claire, then you can add something. Yes and no. I mean, there is a project also, one that springs to my mind in Berlin, which is the Ruin Garden, which is this private garden where they completely celebrated industrial heritage of the site. It was a shipyard and is a garden full of concrete boulders. And I think it's hard aesthetic. I think, no, we see more this aesthetic in public parks and public, but to find in a private garden that someone is willing to have a garden full of concrete boulders, is not probably everyone cup of tea, but there were some exception. There were some exception, especially not maybe everyone's so dramatic, but definitely also the private customers want to have more climate adapted. Also, when they see the water bills, it's no question that they want to go into that direction, I suppose. I don't know, Claire, if you want to add something.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say, there's a garden in Australia, sorry, by Michael Wright and Kath Rush. And it's just won one of the most sort of prestigious landscape awards. And that's a low budget garden. That was, I think, $13,000, so £7,500. But there's a lot of clever thought going behind it. So it was the designer's home garden, but it was done very low budget. So we did try to include definitely different ranges, but there are very big projects that we have, because I think, as Giacomo was saying, the public projects, you can have a lot of influence with those, can't you? Because there's so many people see them.
Exactly. Yes.
So that's why, and I hadn't covered so many of those in the past, so that's why it was interesting as well.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah, and it would be, I mean, it'd be really interesting to have a kind of follow-up book to this, where with each project you actually really bore down on what the sustainability issues actually are, and how they in fact work, and in some cases some auditing. I mean, in some cases I think that there are genuine questions about whether a project that is, may be sustainable, regarded as sustainable in one way, may in fact not be in another. That following that auditing trail of
Yeah.
capture carbon or whatever, or wherever water goes, is something really interesting. Should not be taken as necessarily a criticism.
Oh no.
But different situations
And
demand different priorities.
Can I
Yeah.
say something? Sorry.
Sure.
I just think with that, Noel, yeah, that's a good point. But what we're trying to show is steps in the right direction. Because as
Yes,
Giacomo was saying,
yes,
just about every
yes.
project we went to, like
Yes.
there's one we did in Phoenix, Arizona, and that's an amazing desert garden. And then
Yeah.
right next door is the luscious, looks like Singapore.
Yeah.
So, what we're trying to do is steps in the right direction,
Yes.
and different approaches, and do a very sort of inspiring sort of take on it. It's visual sort of thing that
Yes.
we've done,
Yes.
book, and tried to put good information. So we're just trying to help basically with the
Yes.
movement of what
I
people
think
choose. Because I mean,
changing the aesthetic is
yeah.
so important. And I think that was one of the things that back in the day Pete Aldoff did really very successfully. Actually, also the photographer, the Dutch photographer Marika Herf, her pictures of Henk Gerritsen's garden with all the kind of decaying leaves and old bolted vegetables and all the rest of it. I mean, just followed up by Pete's winter images, really shifted the aesthetic big time in kind of North European or North American perennial planting. And we need that. I mean, here in Southern Europe, the aesthetic is so different. It's really very difficult to get across to people that a garden can be a garden if it doesn't involve irrigation or clipped foliage or really limited range of acceptable garden plants, where there's a sort of a lack of respect basically for that landscape.
I've seen projects recently where I don't think people would even think about it. It's just they have the resources, the financial means, so that just I couldn't imagine like what some of the projects I see. So I mean, with this book, we've got great distribution, and hopefully it just helps spread the aesthetic of a better way.
No, very, 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 very important indeed to be able to do that. Rachel Parrish saying it's great to see old industrial architecture used as a focus for designs rather than thinking it has to be got rid of. But that seems to have been pioneered in Germany. It seems to be well established now that you can, post-industrial environments planted up appropriately can be, really impressive, but also in terms of maintaining that as heritage, I suppose can be important. So Giacomo, what are you working on at the moment? Any particularly interesting projects, particularly if they're sort of very sustainability orientated? I mean, how much are you able to put all of this actually into practice?
Well, into the planting side, there's definitely a commitment that we're trying to introduce plants that are more resilient and so on. And sometimes, Noel, it really takes time to really push for it. Make sure that because it's easier to source Amelanchier, they don't get substituted for Coretaria. We did Sheldon Square, which is a square basing south-facing terraces in Hammersmith, and we had really to make sure we get the Coretarias because I knew it was a drought-tolerant and resilient plant. So it really takes, as I said, also in practice, more steps to do the right things and try to push that, because they were going to be substituted very easily for Amelanchier because we're easier to get. So sometimes it really takes a lot of commitments, and so that's a small example. Elephant Park is a project I've been working for many years, and it adds always a new piece and a new area. And we are trying to include as many rain gardens as possible, but also the kind of look and feel is probably on the wild side. And I think maybe 10 years ago, probably would have been less appreciated, and now
Yes.
now
Sure,
it's
yes.
definitely more accepted. Also, more you see corporate landscapes, or landscapes where people live, is accepted as so. And recycling material is a big topic. Also,
Yeah.
sub-base, also material you don't see, but we know as landscape architect all the recycling material that is used for sub-bases under paving. Is a
Yes.
big saving. Nobody sees it, but
No, right, but it's there.
is
Yes.
really there. And I always point out that that you don't see it, but is a big part of it.
Yeah.
And in terms of planting in urban environment, I'm mostly dealing with woodland edge environments. Rarely sunny plantings.
Right, yeah.
So shade and wind, the combination is horrific. It's horrible, and is very common.
Yes,
More
yes.
because big. So that's kind of being a big kind of learning challenge for me is as landscape architect as well as a plant person, is really thinking really hard what plants can withstand the wind and the combination with the shade.
Yes,
So
which
you
is
cannot use
on the whole not a natural combination because no,
very unnatural.
yeah.
And because the pioneer species would tolerate the wind but not the shade,
Yes.
and the late successional species will tolerate the shade but not the wind.
Not the wind. Yes, I know.
Really, and this is the most, I would say, the most common environment we have in urban
Yes.
environment. Windy shade, which is such an artificial combination of condition, which is man-made, completely man-made. It doesn't exist in nature. So those are the challenges I see more.
Yes.
Yeah, finding these kind of plants that can withstand these situations.
Does the book actually include plant suggestions? We've had a question on that.
In certain essays, there are plants. Yes. Yeah. There are.
I think I can imagine it is difficult actually in a book which is essentially a global book to do that, because what is going to work for one person might be horrendous invasive for somebody else.
Yeah. And also what we try to include at the end of the book, I don't know if people notice, all because we thought it would be kind of useful for people to see where they stand and compare themselves with other climates. So at the end of the book, there is a list with all the gardens and the mean annual temperature, the mean rainfall, the mean, and the latitude and altitude. So people can start comparing themselves like, okay, I'm living in Spain, but actually climatically, I'm quite similar to Austin. So I think this can help people to learn and do, again, small steps into the right direction.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much, both of you, and hope to be working with you again soon, Claire. I think we've got.
Thanks, Noel. Yes.
Hopefully we must talk about that soon, and hope to meet up with you again before too long, Giacomo. And thank you very much, everybody, and look forward to seeing you on another occasion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Noel. I really appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
We hope that you are enjoying this recording from Garden Masterclass's Thursday Garden Chat programme. We started doing this in April 2020 during the first COVID lockdown, when we did it 5 days a week for 2 months, which was a wonderful experience. Since then, we've carried on doing it just for one session a week. We have always done this as a public service. We initially started it as a morale booster for the garden and landscape industry during a very difficult time, and we've so loved doing it that we've carried on doing this. But our presenters give their time for free. We give our time for free. We do incur costs, administrative, technical, and sometimes for support staff, and we would very much appreciate the odd donation to help us keep going and help keep this a free service, which we'd very much like to do. So please go to our homepage, and down at the bottom there's a donate button, and we'll be very grateful. Thank you.